For centuries, the world was a canvas of blank spaces, waiting for brave explorers to chart the unknown. Many returned as heroes, their names etched forever into history, but some never came back. Their greatest discovery was not new lands or hidden passages, but the mystery of their own disappearance. These vanished pioneers left behind triumph, questions, and chilling legends. Stay with us, because the final story on this list is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. At number 10, we step back into the sands of ancient Egypt, where one of the most haunting mysteries of antiquity unfolds: the disappearance of the lost army of Cambyses II. Around 525 BC, King Cambyses II, ruler of the vast Persian Empire, dispatched an enormous force of 50,000 men into the western desert with a singular objective: to conquer the Oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis. This sacred site was not only a religious center, but also a place of immense political importance. The Persian army marched like an unstoppable tide across the barren landscape, a thunderous procession of soldiers pushing forward into uncharted desert terrain. Yet, according to the Greek historian Herodotus, after 7 grueling days, their journey was abruptly cut short. A sudden, ferocious sandstorm swept across the desert, engulfing the entire army in a deadly wall of wind and dust. In moments, they were swallowed whole by the desert, leaving no survivors, no weapons, no bones, only silence. For over 2,000 years, this account stood as a chilling reminder of nature's fury, repeated as fact in countless texts. However, modern archaeological searches have failed to uncover any trace of this supposedly massive force, casting doubt on the entire narrative. Some scholars now believe it may never have been a natural disaster at all. The Dutch Egyptologist Olaf Kaper has suggested that the army was not lost to the sands, but rather ambushed and annihilated by the rebel pharaoh Petubastis III. According to this theory, the sandstorm tale was a carefully crafted piece of propaganda by Darius the Great to conceal the humiliation of a Persian defeat. Whether consumed by the desert or erased from memory by deliberate manipulation, the lost army remains a powerful symbol of how history can be shaped by myth, politics, and the shifting sands of time. Coming in at number 9, we encounter not just one explorer's disappearance, but the tragic vanishing of 2 ambitious brothers, Gaspar and Miguel Corte-Real. At the dawn of the 16th century, Portugal and Spain were locked in a fierce rivalry to chart new lands and claim dominion over uncharted waters. In 1501, Gaspar Corte-Real embarked on a daring voyage to the icy frontiers of Newfoundland and Labrador, seeking a coveted northwest passage to Asia. Though the elusive route remained undiscovered, Gaspar claimed new territory for Portugal and infamously captured 57 indigenous people, intending to sell them as slaves in Europe. He sent 2 of his ships back to Lisbon with this grim cargo, while he pressed onward with only 1 vessel. That decision sealed his fate, for he was never seen again. His disappearance prompted his brother Miguel to launch a desperate rescue mission in 1502, commanding 3 ships to retrace Gaspar's course. The fleet split up to comb the North Atlantic coastline, and while 2 ships returned, Miguel's vessel vanished without a trace. 2 brothers, 2 journeys, both lost to the sea. Yet centuries later, an extraordinary clue surfaced. In 1918, a professor at Brown University studied a mysterious inscription on a boulder in Dighton, Massachusetts. The carving, dated 1511, bore the words, "Miguel Corte-Real, by the will of God, here leader of the Indians." If authentic, it suggests that Miguel may have survived his disappearance, living among indigenous communities and even rising as a leader. The Corte-Real brothers saga reflects both the ruthless ambition and the tragic irony of the Age of Discovery, where dreams of empire, driven by greed, could end not only in death, but in an unexpected reversal of destiny. At number 8, the spotlight falls on Henry Hudson, a man whose name is etched forever in maps, yet whose end remains shrouded in ice and betrayal. Hudson was no stranger to peril. By the early 1600s, he had already carved his legacy by exploring the river, strait, and bay that all still bear his name. His ambition, however, outpaced his fortune. In 1610, he set sail aboard the Discovery with a crew of 21 men on what would become his final voyage. Their mission: to find a passage across the top of the New World to Asia. After months of sailing through treacherous seas, Hudson triumphantly reached the vast bay that today immortalizes him. But triumph quickly turned into tragedy. The ship became trapped in the ice as brutal winter descended. Supplies dwindled, disease spread, and tempers flared. Hudson's stubborn refusal to turn back once spring arrived, insisting instead on pressing deeper into uncharted waters, pushed his exhausted men beyond breaking point. In June 1611, mutiny erupted. The crew turned on their captain, seizing control of the ship and condemning Hudson to a cruel fate, Along with his teenage son John and 7 loyal or sick crew members, he was forced into a small open boat, without food, weapons, or hope. Cast adrift on the icy waters of Hudson Bay, they were never seen again. No wreckage, no remains, only silence and speculation. Some believe they succumbed quickly to exposure and starvation. Others imagine they may have endured for weeks, clinging to survival before finally being claimed by the unforgiving Arctic. Hudson's disappearance highlights the darkest truth of exploration. The greatest dangers often lie not in storms or frozen seas, but in the desperation of men who have lost faith in their leader. His name may live on in geography, but his end remains a haunting mystery adrift in the endless ice. At number 7, we journey into the twilight of the 18th century, where the ambitious voyage of Jean-François de Galaup, Comte de la Perouse, became one of the greatest maritime enigmas in French history. Handpicked by King Louis XVI, La Perouse was tasked with continuing the unfinished Pacific discoveries of Captain James Cook, while simultaneously advancing France's global reach in science, trade, and diplomacy. With 2 frigates, La Astrolabe and La Boussole, and a crew of 225 men, his mission stretched across the globe. For 3 years, the expedition produced stunning achievements. They meticulously mapped the coasts of California, Alaska, Russia, and Japan, and collected invaluable scientific data that expanded European understanding of distant lands. By 1788, La Perouse's reputation stood alongside the greatest explorers. But after a resupply stop at Botany Bay in Australia, the 2 ships sailed into the Pacific and vanished without leaving a trace. For nearly 4 decades, France was haunted by the silence. The mystery deepened with Napoleon himself reportedly asking, "Has anyone heard news of La Perouse?" The answer finally came in 1826, when Irish sea captain Peter Dillon gathered reports from Solomon Islanders and discovered wreckage scattered across the reefs of Vanikoro. The remnants confirmed that both ships had been destroyed in a violent shipwreck, yet the tale only grew more fascinating. Local oral traditions revealed that survivors had lived for years on the island, even building a smaller vessel to attempt an escape into the Pacific. Their second disappearance, never resolved, layered mystery upon mystery. The La Perouse expedition stands as a haunting reminder that exploration's greatest discoveries often arrive entwined with tragedy, and sometimes the answer to one puzzle only reveals an even deeper enigma. At number 6, the story shifts to George Bass, a naval surgeon whose passion for exploration eclipsed his medical career and secured him a place among Australia's pioneering adventurers. Known for his daring voyages in small boats, Bass's greatest contribution came in 1797 when he set out in an open whaleboat with only 6 companions, sailing more than 300 miles along the rugged southern coast of New South Wales. He observed powerful swells that convinced him of a wide channel separating mainland Australia from Van Diemen's Land. His insight proved correct, and the discovery of Bass Strait reshaped maritime navigation in the region. Yet Bass's adventurous spirit soon led him into murkier waters. By 1803, he commanded the brig Venus, embarking on what was supposed to be a supply voyage to Tahiti. Unofficially, however, he intended to conduct clandestine trade with Spanish colonies in South America, a risky venture entangled with smuggling and international rivalry. After setting sail from Sydney, Bass and his crew were never heard from again. While many assume the Venus was lost to storms or hidden reefs, more sinister theories have circulated for over 2 centuries. Some accounts suggest the Spanish captured Bass and condemned him to forced labor in silver mines, a fate as grim as it was plausible in an era of colonial intrigue. Despite exhaustive searches, no official records or artifacts have confirmed his end. George Bass remains both a national hero in Australia and a symbol of how the promise of discovery could easily be swallowed by political danger, greed, or the unforgiving sea. His disappearance reminds us that the line between exploration and peril was perilously thin in the Age of Empire. At number 5, we encounter perhaps the most infamous mystery in the annals of Arctic exploration: the disappearance of Sir John Franklin and his crew of 129 men. In 1845, Britain launched what was then its most ambitious Arctic expedition, sending Franklin at the helm of the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. These ships represented the pinnacle of naval engineering, reinforced for ice, fitted with steam engines, and stocked with years' worth of provisions. Their mission was nothing short of legendary: to finally conquer the Northwest Passage, the elusive Arctic route that promised to transform global trade. After entering the icy labyrinth of Canada's Arctic archipelago, The expedition seemed destined for triumph, but by 1846, both ships became hopelessly trapped in thick ice near King William Island. Cut off from escape, the men faced starvation, scurvy, and despair. Not a single one survived. For decades, the fate of Franklin's expedition became a national obsession, sparking more than a dozen rescue missions. Gradually, evidence emerged: shallow graves on Beechey Island, skeletal remains scattered on King William Island, and artifacts that told a harrowing tale of men driven to cannibalism in their final days. For years, the dominant theory was lead poisoning from poorly soldered food tins, thought to have clouded judgment and weakened the crew. Yet recent scientific studies of human remains have challenged this view. New research suggests that starvation and zinc deficiency were the real killers, leaving the men vulnerable to disease while their bodies broke down from within. The final chapter of this haunting saga arrived in the 21st century when the Erebus was discovered in 2014, followed by the Terror in 2016, remarkably well preserved in Arctic waters. Even with these finds, Franklin's expedition endures as one of history's greatest cautionary tales, an exploration meant to cement Britain's dominance that instead became a chilling testament to hubris, desperation, and the unforgiving power of the polar world. At number 4, we turn to the wild interior of Australia, where Ludwig Leichhardt, often hailed as the Prince of Explorers, etched his name into history before vanishing in one of exploration's most baffling disappearances. Born in Prussia, Leichhardt carved out a reputation as a brilliant naturalist and cartographer. Its crowning triumph came in 1844 when he led a grueling 3,000-mile trek from Queensland's Moreton Bay to Port Essington in the Northern Territory. The expedition, lasting more than a year, was a stunning success. It mapped vast, uncharted regions, filled journals with botanical and zoological observations, and proved Leichhardt's remarkable endurance and determination. Yet the explorer's restless spirit demanded more. In 1848, he launched his most ambitious plan: to cross the Australian continent from east to west, a feat no one had yet attempted. With 7 men, livestock, and supplies, he departed Cagoon Station with a famous declaration when asked where he was bound. He simply replied, "To the setting sun." Those would be the last words attributed to him. Weeks later, he and his entire party disappeared without a trace. Speculation ran wild. Some believed they succumbed to the desert's brutal conditions. Others claimed they were massacred by Aboriginal groups, a theory widely accepted at the time. Yet tantalizing clues emerged in later decades: trees carved with an L in areas consistent with his intended route, fragments of equipment, and reports from indigenous oral history suggesting the group may have made it deep into the interior. These hints suggest Leichhardt may have crossed much of the continent before disaster struck. His fate remains unsolved, making him a national enigma. Today, Leichhardt is remembered less for the expedition he completed and more for the mystery of the one that erased him, turning his disappearance into Australia's greatest exploration puzzle. At number 3, the story plunges into the green labyrinth of the Amazon, where Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett pursued a dream that ultimately consumed him. Fawcett was no ordinary adventurer. A geographer, surveyor, and member of the Royal Geographical Society, he combined military precision with an insatiable belief in hidden civilizations. After years of charting remote South American frontiers, he became convinced that a magnificent, ancient city, what he called the Lost City of Z, lay hidden deep within the rainforest. His accounts, filled with strange creatures and mysterious ruins, captured the imagination of the public and even inspired Arthur Conan Doyle's novel, The Lost World. In 1925, Fawcett launched his final and most daring expedition, accompanied by his son Jack and Jack's close friend Raleigh Rimmel. Their last known message came from a camp ominously named Dead Horse, where Fawcett noted they were heading further into the jungle. After that, silence. No bodies, no equipment, no wreckage was ever recovered. Their disappearance sparked countless follow-up expeditions, some of which claimed to find bones or artifacts, but none provided definitive proof of their fate. Theories range from starvation and disease to capture by hostile tribes, though some accounts suggest Fawcett may have willingly integrated into an indigenous community. What sets this case apart is that Fawcett vanished not after confirming a discovery, but in pursuit of one that may never have existed. His obsession transformed the lost city of Z into a legend that endures nearly a century later. Fawcett's story embodies the fatal allure of myth, an explorer not consumed by the jungle alone, but by his unyielding faith in a city that blurred the line between history and imagination. At number 2, we find one of the greatest names in exploration, Roald Amundsen, whose disappearance stunned the world and added a poignant final chapter to an already legendary career. Amundsen was the embodiment of polar mastery. He charted the elusive Northwest Passage, beat Robert Falcon Scott in the epic race to the South Pole in 1911, and in 1926 soared over the North Pole in an airship, completing mankind's conquest of the planet's extremes. By the late 1920s, he had nothing left to prove. His name was already carved into history. Yet destiny called him once more, not for glory, but for rescue. On May 25, 1928, the Italian airship Italia, commanded by his rival Umberto Nobile, crashed in the Arctic, leaving survivors stranded on drifting ice. Despite their rivalry, Amundsen agreed to join a rescue mission. On June 18th, he boarded a French flying boat and flew north into dense fog. That was the last time he was seen alive. Wreckage later found in the Arctic confirmed the plane had crashed, but no bodies were recovered. Some suggested Amundsen accepted the mission knowing it might be his end, seeking one final dramatic act. Others believe it was sheer misfortune, a cruel irony that the man who had tamed the poles was lost in their icy embrace. Unlike other explorers who vanished chasing personal ambition, Amundsen disappeared while trying to save others, a hero to the very last. His death closed the heroic age of polar exploration, leaving behind a legacy unmatched and a mystery unsolved, the polar master swallowed by the very wilderness he once conquered. Finally, at number 1, we reach the most famous disappearance in the history of exploration, the vanishing of Amelia Earhart. A true icon of the skies, Earhart shattered barriers as the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, becoming a symbol of courage, progress, and the limitless possibilities of aviation. By 1937, she set her sights on her boldest challenge, a round-the-world flight that would make her the first woman to circumnavigate the globe. With navigator Fred Noonan at her side, she covered most of the 29,000-mile journey before disaster struck. On July 2, 1937, near the final leg of the trip, their plane disappeared over the vast Pacific while searching for the tiny refueling stop of Howland Island. Earhart's final radio calls revealed mounting desperation. She could not locate the island, fuel was running low, and communication was breaking down. Then, silence. Despite one of the largest air and sea searches in history, no conclusive evidence was found. The official theory holds that the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific, but the lack of wreckage fueled endless speculation. Some researchers argue she crash-landed on Nikumaroro Atoll, supported by discoveries of artifacts like a woman's shoe and cosmetic jars. Others propose darker scenarios: capture by Japanese forces, secret espionage missions for the US, or even survival under a hidden identity. Each theory keeps the mystery alive. Amelia Earhart's disappearance transcends aviation. It transformed her into a timeless legend. She was not just a pilot lost to the ocean. She became a mythic figure, embodying the dangers of pushing human limits and the enduring allure of the unknown. Her name remains synonymous with the ultimate unsolved mystery of exploration. The compass once guided these explorers toward discovery, but for them, it ultimately pointed to oblivion. Their courage pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, yet their disappearances remind us that the unknown still holds power over even the bravest. True mysteries never fade. They live on as legends, inspiring new generations to wonder what lies beyond the horizon. If you enjoyed this journey through history's greatest vanishings, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating stories. Thanks for watching.